"I'll take the fat one," the giant mountain man said in a deep, booming voice, pointing toward the trembling young woman who stood apart from the line of labor girls. His words cut through the dry, dusty air like a whip crack, and all eyes turned toward him. The girl, heavy-set and dirt-stained, lowered her gaze, ashamed. She had already endured weeks of jeering from townsfolk, of being overlooked when buyers came to the square to choose strong-backed workers. The slimmer girls were taken first, often for kitchen duties or saloon work, while she was left behind, called lazy, mocked for her size, and priced lower than the rest. That morning, the trader had nearly given up on her, muttering that he'd take $1 if anyone so much as showed interest. No one expected the towering mountain man to pick her. He was a figure out of legend, 6.5 feet tall, broad-shouldered, his chest bare beneath his leather vest, his hands scarred and powerful. He came down from the wilderness only rarely, usually for supplies, and when he did, people whispered stories about him, that he could split trees with one swing of an axe, that he had killed a bear with nothing but a hunting knife, that he lived alone with wolves in the high country. When he pointed at her, a ripple of laughter passed through the crowd. "The fat one," someone chuckled. "$1 for dead weight." Another man shouted, "She'll eat you out of house and home before she can lift a finger to help." The trader smirked and spat, happy to make any sale at all. But the mountain man didn't laugh. He handed over a silver coin, took the girl by the arm, and with surprising gentleness led her away from the jeering men. The girl's name was Clara. She hadn't spoken since her parents lost their farm to debt collectors. She had been sold into labor, shuffled between traders, and treated as little more than livestock. She expected this giant stranger to be no different, perhaps worse. As he guided her out of town and toward the waiting wagon, she braced herself for cruelty. Yet the first words he spoke to her, away from the crowd, were quiet and unexpected. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Clara." He nodded. "Clara. I'm Jonah. You'll ride with me up into the mountains. Don't fear. No one will hurt you while you're under my roof." Clara's chest tightened. It had been so long since anyone spoke to her like she was human. She nodded, still too afraid to believe him. The journey into the wilderness was long and grueling, but Jonah never raised his voice, never struck her, never mocked her size the way others had. Instead, he stopped often to let her rest, shared food from his stores, and even offered his coat at night when the air grew cold. Clara noticed the way he moved, how effortlessly he chopped wood, how he handled the horses, how he scanned the tree-line with wary eyes as if always expecting danger. When they reached his cabin, perched high in a clearing where pine trees stretched toward the sky, Clara's breath caught. It wasn't much, logs stacked, a stone hearth smoking gently, furs drying on a rack, but it was more home than she had known in years. Jonah put her to work, but never beyond her strength. She gathered water, swept floors, helped tend the small garden patch. At first, she feared he would grow impatient with her slowness, but he never did. He showed her how to snare rabbits, how to mend torn clothing, how to bake bread in the fire. One evening, after weeks of silence between them, Clara finally asked the question that burned in her chest, "Why did you choose me?" Jonah paused, looking up from the carving he was working on. His eyes were steady and kind, though shadowed with a loneliness she recognized. "Because no one else would. And because I know what it's like to be cast aside. The world looks at me and sees a brute, a beast. They look at you and see only what they want to mock. But I saw someone strong enough to still be standing, even after all they've done to you." Her throat tightened. No one had ever spoken of her as strong before. Days turned into months. Clara grew healthier in the mountain air, her cheeks flushed with color, her spirit slowly unshackled. She discovered laughter again, found she could keep pace with Jonah on the trails, and even sang to herself while hanging laundry in the sun. Jonah, for his part, grew used to her presence, her soft humming, her quick hands with mending, her quiet but fierce determination. One night, as the wind howled outside, Jonah confessed his story. He had once lived among townsfolk, but his size and strength made him feared, ridiculed, and hunted. When he defended himself, they called him a savage. He retreated to the mountains to find peace, though peace often eluded him. Clara listened, her heart aching for him, and realized they were mirrors of each other. Both judged, both unwanted, both longing for a place where they belonged. The bond between them deepened. It was not the fiery passion of fairy tales, but something sturdier, like the roots of the mountain pines. Jonah never forced affection, never demanded gratitude. Yet one morning, when Clara awoke to find him carving a necklace from bone and stringing it with a polished river stone, she understood. He pressed it into her hand, rough fingers trembling. "For you," he said simply. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time, she felt seen, not as the fat one, not as cheap labor, but as Clara, a woman worthy of care. Years later, the townsfolk would whisper about the strange couple in the mountains, the giant and the woman no one else wanted. But by then, Clara and Jonah had built a life of quiet strength. She no longer flinched at laughter or cruel words, for she knew what they had was real. And when Jonah held her hand by the fire, both of them scarred but whole, she realized something she had never thought possible: she was free. And she was loved.